Welcome to Talking Industrial Automation, a podcast where you get to know the people who make modern industrial automation possible. You will get to hear from CSIA system integrators and industry partners to get a better understanding of how they help their clients solve process challenges and how they've earned success in their careers. Along the way, we will touch on system integration best practices, technology, trends, and challenges. Whether you are a manufacturer, end user, supplier, or system integrator, you will enjoy the insights these industry professionals bring to this podcast. Let's get started. Hi guys, I decided to take a short hiatus for the month of June, but don't worry, I still have an episode for you. It's an encore presentation of a panel discussion about growing into a leadership role that was moderated by John Sullivan of DMC, the chair of the CSIA Emerging Leaders Special Interest Group. Listen as current CSIA member leaders Andrew Palmberg, Keith Manichett, and Becca Johnson talk about their leadership journeys and share stories, challenges, and lessons learned. I hope you enjoyed as much as I do. Until next time.
We've got three panelists that have agreed to provide some context, as well as kind of discuss their leadership roles. First, we have Andrew Palmberg. Andrew has been in the control industry for 25 years. He's worked with technical systems, and he's got a depth of knowledge, both in control panel, network design, instrumentation, motor control centers, and a heavy focus in the wastewater industry. Andrew has a Bachelor of Science in Mechanical Engineering from Purdue University. Also joining us is Becca. Becca is a continuous improvement, quality, and safety professional with Great Solutions, which was formerly Stone Technologies. She has over 10 years of experience with safety, quality, lean process improvements, training, leadership, and change management. And she also was a recipient of the CSIA Rising Star Award in 2019. And our final panelist is Keith. Keith is an engineering manager at Huffman Engineering. Huffman Engineering has been a certified CSIA member since 2005. Keith started as an entry-level position building control panels, and he's grown into his seat with the Huffman Engineering leadership team. He's a graduate of Missouri University of Science and Technology with a degree in electrical engineering. He's been named the Control Engineering Leaders Under 40 class of 2012, and he also received the CSIA Rising Star Award in 2014. So definitely big thanks to you guys for joining us and providing your kind of insight there. Andrew, can you just tell me a little bit about your current role and how you got there and a little bit more of your background?
My current role is engineering manager. I started at TSI 25 years ago doing field service. I got my degree in mechanical engineering, and we were a much smaller company at that time. And the owners were a little bit apprehensive of having somebody right out of engineering school go into programming or engineering. So I had to do a little bit of field service work. And then I gradually moved into doing more engineering and programming work and transitioned into a project manager after about 8 years at TSI. And then in 2014, I had the opportunity to become engineering manager at TSI. And I oversee a group of approximately 17 employees, and I oversee the drafting department and the engineering group, which does primarily hardware design.
So digging a little more into that, are there kind of any routines or philosophies or things that you've developed in order to guide your team? What's kind of your management style, and how is that kind of adapted coming from your growth through the whole organization?
So the management style is a little bit of collaborative, a little bit of persuasive and participative. What I'm trying to do is develop enough independence in the group that they are comfortable making decisions on their own, but I'm a resource and I like to be involved with some of the decision making when problems come up that are a little bit difficult. A couple of things I like to use: I have a weekly meeting where I go over what everyone's workload is for the week and some of the issues that everyone might be having. I usually describe a topic that is relevant to the team. So if we have to go over some standards or go over some new procedures that were just introduced in the company, I like to review them there so everyone's familiar with what's going on. I use Microsoft Project, and I set up a planner which tracks all of the deliverables, important deliverables for the engineering group. So I can just get an idea of what's going on with the team and make sure that nothing is getting behind as far as deliverables.
Keith, we'll kind of jump over to you. I know you have a kind of similar transition from, starting at the lowest level and moving into a leadership position. How has your experience maybe been similar or different? And how has that kind of shaped some of your management styles and how you work with your team?
I started in the beginning. I was one of those guys that when I got interviewed, I remember Howard asking me the question, do you know what a PLC is? And I had no idea what a PLC was. And then here I am 25 years later, and I'm the engineering manager. When I started, I didn't know anything about controls really, except for kind of theoretical stuff. But I was very technical, helped build control panels, helped do some of the CAD, started getting into some of the programming, whether PLCs and the operator interfaces. I kind of got into database, networking, anything technical. I was just like, yeah, keep handing it to me. I love this stuff. I love learning that. So for me as a leader, I love the title of this session of, growing into a leadership role, because for me, it was very much growing into a leader. Some people are born leaders. I was not one of those. So I definitely had to grow into that role. So my current role is engineering manager, and what that entails for me is just, as far as for the company, kind of responsible for making sure technically that we're, all the engineering staff has, the skills and the tools that they need to do the jobs. And then just making sure we're staying on top of technology and just forming those relationships. As far as like leadership style, I'm a very relational person. So that is kind of my style of just being relational. I have about 10 to 12 younger engineers that are underneath me that what we call coach. So I'm kind of their mentor, but it's very much relational. Just, I'll walk into their office, just find out, hey, what's going on outside of the office? Because I find that plays into, how things are going. They could be having a terrible time outside of the office. The stress alone of the job itself, that just doesn't help. So it's just having an understanding of people. People's the hardest part of the job. Technically, people are like a unstable PID loop, constantly trying to tune them all the time, keep them tuned. So, you think you got them tuned right and they're happy. And then next thing you know, they're out of tune again. And it's like something completely different.
And Becca, you come from a much different background, the non-technical kind of background in this. Tell us a little bit how that might have shaped how you transitioned your role and how you continue to contribute inside your organization.
Correct. I'm not a traditional manager. I don't have any people reporting directly to me. So a leader in a different perspective, and then not an engineer. Currently, I am working for a company called Gray Solutions. They just recently acquired Stone Technologies, which I'm sure many of you are familiar with. My title is to be determined, but I'm in charge of safety and quality and continuous improvement. And recently have been given the role of chairperson of the integration effort. So I get to help run the team that is merging our two worlds together between Stone and Gray. It's a lot. It's overwhelming. It's exciting. It's a new challenge. I'm very excited for the opportunity. So as far as management style, very similar to Keith in that to me, it's all about relationships, building relationships with people and understanding how they work, getting their perspectives and their ideas and listening a lot and running those through. So it's a little bit about me.
Are there any particular strengths that you've found that have been really relevant for this role or anything as you kind of transition to this different type of leadership role? What are the things that have really done well for you?
I think not being afraid to try, just putting yourself out there, even though you're not an expert or the best at whatever it is, trying and listening to people and hearing their ideas and their perspectives and their issues and helping resolve those items. So that's what I think my biggest is just that lack of fear to try something new and exciting and talk to people, build those relationships, like Keith said.
Yeah, one of the things Becca said, listening. We do this thing at Huffman Engineering where technically it's like listen, learn it, do it well, then pass it on. But I kind of use that as well as when it comes to people, listening to people. One of my strengths is definitely listening. If you knew me like growing up in high school and stuff, I was pretty shy, definitely not an outgoing person at all. So I was always listening, and that's kind of helped me as I grew. Just being able to listen to what people are saying, because sometimes it's easy to just be having a conversation and, hearing them, but not really hearing them. that's been really key for me, is to be able to listen to what people are actually saying.
And to add on to that, I think it's also repeating back or writing down what you think you heard. Many times, I think I hear you correctly, and it's not. So that's another part of being a leader. You put yourself out there and you're going to screw up. You're going to hear things wrong. You're going to do things incorrectly, and not being afraid to do that, I think, is a big part of it as well.
Totally unrehearsed, but yeah. So that part about writing things down and just repeating back to, what you heard, because a lot of times early on, I found myself, I listened to well, and I thought I understood what they're saying, but it wasn't. And then I think somewhere along the line, I picked up from someone or hearing something or reading something that, hey, just repeat back what you heard. And I actually started doing that with my kids too, because seems like oftentimes I misunderstand what my kids are telling me. But if I repeat it back, they're like, oh, okay, yep, you got it, Dad. That's what I was telling you.
OMG. Can you believe it's the middle of the year already? I find that, shocking. On the upside, it means I can offer you something special if one of your goals is to join CSIA. And why wouldn't you? This global community has so much to offer SIs, from best practices to certification, professional development, and even access to professional services experts, including insurance, financial, and legal, who understand the SI's unique business needs. For partner members, CSIA offers an ecosystem to grow your SI programs, understand your customers' pain points, monitor industry trends, and share your thought leadership. Best of all, CSIA is a soft place to land. By that, I mean it is a community of like-minded people who are willing to share, commiserate, and celebrate your wins, your losses, and your vision. So what are you waiting for? Oh, wait, you're probably waiting for my special offer. Here it is. For the months of July and August, membership dues and all Industrial Automation Exchange upgrades and packages are half price. And no, this is not half off like I am crazy Jimmy yelling, everything must go. It's really just because CSIA prorates its dues. But boy, that lacks excitement, doesn't it? To find out more, visit www.controlsys.org/shine. Wait, maybe I should do the crazy Jimmy route after all.
Andrew, has there been a similar theme for you on listening, or is there a different approach you've taken that's been really effective?
I think the listening probably becomes a little more challenging to me because I like to talk. And so I've always been somebody that likes to engage with my coworkers and talk about stories and personal stuff with them. It's interesting. That was one of what I considered a strength when I was starting this role. Wow, I want to be really social and I'm going to be able to engage with all my employees. And it's a certain strength if you can find a reasonable cutoff point for when to have a good conversation. A lot of times after work is a better time to have those in-depth conversations. And so what I realized a couple times, I was talking a lot and asking people how their weekends were and spending a lot of time when people come in my office chatting. What kind of learned was that I could do that to a certain degree, but really focusing my job was to really figure out what problem they had and try to get to the point as quick as I could without being rude, but spend a little less time socializing and a little bit more time trying to identify what their concern was or problems that the employees had, because I wasn't initially doing a very good job addressing those concerns. I was having a lot of fun being social and talking to the employees. That was a little bit of a challenge to redirect my style, because it's something that I really want to be social all the time, but I've learned in a role where you're upper management and you're trying to get efficiency out of your employees, you're better served really trying to focus on the things like Becca and Keith said, listening to what the employees have to say, and then trying to make sure you address what they are asking you to do. A lot of times it's difficult for newer employees to phrase what they want you to do. And so you have to find their style. And so I've really noticed with the engineers that we hire that are new to this process, I hear what they're asking, but they don't even know the right questions to ask. And so there's a challenge there in really stepping back and understanding those employees to address their concerns.
Andrew, I wanted to dig into one of those things you said. One of the things you had to do was find their style. Tips and advice for how you go about finding the style for your team.
I don't know if there's an easy silver bullet for doing that. I think it's probably a little bit of making sure that your ego is at a lower level. You really want to be able to understand their employees. One of the challenges that I had as an engineering manager, I'm responsible for performance reviews and figuring out how to make people more efficient and enjoy this job more and to make sure the quality's there. Those are some of the metrics that I have for my team. The initial process is just learning how to do the performance review. And then you identify some areas where the employee isn't necessarily as strong. That also gives you an opportunity to see their style too when you're doing those reviews, and also working with those employees day after day in the projects that they have. But what you initially might see as an employee's style, it changes after you know that employee too. So it's being open to recognizing things and realizing that I thought this person was really assertive and creative, but their strengths are more organizational and they do a much better job with really getting the details of the job done well. You have to be adaptive too, and recognizing that you may identify a certain employee as a certain style. And over time, from anecdotal evidence, other coworkers or talking to them in reviews, you might find that they work well with different parameters. The other thing I've been doing too is in the performance reviews, I'm trying to identify, have the employee try to work through their challenges to come up with some creative ways on how to improve their process. Because it's tempting as a manager to try to force your way of how you do your project work into a certain point. Well, if you just are more organized, you do a better job. And that's not necessarily the case, because some employees just aren't going to be more organized the way that I am. And I had an employee that was kind of a messy desk. He can find things, but he has to work a little bit hard to find them. And one day I came over to his desk and I said, "Hey, I think it would really help if we just organize your desk. So next week, I'm going to go and file all your paperwork and get everything neat. So you're going to be a better employee." I thought about it for a week and I thought, that's not going to help him at all. That's what I would do. And so I just sat down with him and I asked him, hey, is there a better way to figure out how to find what you need or make sure you don't miss the loose ends? And we came up with a system where he was using OneNote and he's just tracking things in OneNote and Planner now. He still has a messy desk, but now he can remember what he forgot to do. And that wasn't the problem at all. And so there's a temptation to look at people's styles and to try to adapt them to what works for you. It's really problematic because all people are different, and it's a little bit easier to try to see what someone's style is and then coach to their strengths, because it's really difficult to change someone. That's not very practical.
Thank you. Kind of taking a little bit of another shift here, but let's start to talk about some of our challenges and pieces. We talked a little bit about communication and listening and figuring things out, but Keith, I'll jump over to you. What has been your biggest challenge with transitioning from the individual contributor into the more manager role? What did you do to overcome that challenge? What was the hardest hurdle for you?
I probably had several, but the one that comes to mind for me is, I came up very technically oriented. So that was a passion of mine, of just doing the technical work, shifting to not so much me doing the work, but having other people do that. There's always that, unfortunately, that perfectionism that creeps in where inside, you watch, I'm sure everybody's seen this and done this, where they have people that they're working with and they do something and they're just kind of clenching their fists where that's driving me nuts because I know it could be better or it would be my way. So that's, the biggest thing is it's not about me as a technical person. That's really hard. So being able to let go of that and say, you know what, the bigger picture, seeing that bigger picture of it's not about me doing that. It's, if I have a team of people that can do just as good of work, we're better off in the long run. And we're a small enough company that I still can satisfy my technical needs as far as getting into a little bit of the nitty gritty and just doing some of that. But that was, at least for me, growing into a more manager type position of not doing so much of the technical and kind of shifting to helping others, coaching them. I liked what Andrew said about understanding them and coaching to their strengths and not trying to change them.
If you are an engineer, or what I like to call engineer adjacent, you like data. So here are some quick stats for you. While searching online, 43% of engineers filter through at least 5 pages of search results to find the information they're looking for. 45% say they consult industry directory websites. And 41% spend between a quarter and half of the buying process online, and 33% spend over half of the buying process online. Why am I telling you all this? It's simple. If your company is not on the CSIA Industrial Automation Exchange, you are missing out. It's free to join, but CSIA members get an automatic profile upgrade to a bronze level, as well as discounts for other upgrades and packages. To learn more, email me, Lisa Richter, at podcast@controlsys.org. And now for the fine print. The data in this promo comes from the 2023 State of Marketing to Engineers, published by True Marketing and Global Spec. That wasn't so bad, was it?
Andrew, you had a similar transition. Any thoughts on going from kind of coworker to manager? Was that a challenge that you had as well?
It was. One of the things that I had to learn to do was when you're in a position where you're overseeing a team of individuals, and then you're also getting productivity and budget conscious projects to fruition, you're also beholden to the managers above you that are really looking for completely different things sometimes than you are as a team leader, but you still have to be sensitive to upper management's requirements. And a lot of times there are some really unreasonable and kind of harsh metrics that you have to balance. You have to be transitioning between, you don't want to pass that information into your team, but you also have to motivate your team to be more productive. If you're not meeting numbers for budgets, if the engineering hours are over on the projects that you're working on, you're trying to get more work, you're in a competitive market. And really the way to do that is to get your team more efficient, but you also don't want to burn your employees out, but you also want to be sensitive to your upper managers so you're not taking their concerns lightly. So there's a real challenge in being that lightning rod for upper management, and oftentimes like, you need to get your team to do better, to pass that information and motivate your team in a way where you're not getting chewed up in that process, because it's a stressful place to be sometimes. And like Keith said, if you don't take it personally, if you realize that the more that you look at the job as, hey, I get to take these individuals and really make them into very productive and happy members of my team, but I also get to insulate them from a certain level of some of that frustration at the top. Reconciling that was really challenging to me, and to get a thick skin, because there are sometimes when somebody's frustrated at you, it's hard not to take it personally, especially when, like he said, I came from a more technical background. I was very proud of the work I did as a project manager, as an engineer. I did really, really well in all the jobs that I did management for. And I was very proud of very few negative comments about any work I did. And then all of a sudden, transitioning into engineering manager, there's some criticism that's levied against you. Hey, you're not doing well in this. You need to do this. And so that was a big challenge. I feel like enough time has gone by, you shrug your shoulders, you listen to what people are saying that are trying to improve you, and realize that, hey, it's a business and we really need to make sure everybody pulls their weight and does a good job. And it's really important to make your team better so your company's better.
I would just love to interject, John, if that's okay. Even though I don't have direct reports, I'm still leading a team, right? So I have to lead us through to a goal. And one of my mentors told me the best way to lead is without a carrot or a stick. And I loved that. And it has stuck with me for years, because you want to figure out a way for people to want to do what you want them to do. So trying to figure out what's in it for them, what drives them. We all came to work to be successful in our companies and as individuals. And so figuring out those relationships and how people work, and then helping them understand what's in it for them. But that carrot stick, I love that. Like, how do you get people to want to do what you want to do? And that's my constant challenge. And it doesn't work for everybody all the time.
I would agree. I think one of the biggest benefits of being in a manager type position is seeing the successes that your team has and just being able to see that enjoyment that they get out of that. I think that's definitely one of the benefits for sure.
Back over to you. Were there any unique challenges that you had transitioning this role, and how did you overcome them?
I would say my biggest challenge with the role I'm in right now, first it was joining Stone in January of 2020, working from home. Most of my coworkers are in Missouri, right? But we're all over the place. How do you get to know each other? And now I've only been with the company a year, and now we're acquired by Gray Solutions. So now there's another 85 employees I need to get to know. And so I think the biggest challenge is getting to know the people and earn their trust and respect while trying to execute a goal. It boils down to communication, right? So how do we communicate with each other, especially with this dynamic of a remote workforce, which I know all of us got the joy of experiencing, but it definitely adds another challenge. So I think for me personally, my biggest challenge is getting to know the people, getting to know how they work, getting to know what motivates them while trying to execute a really challenging objective. To overcome that, I think it's just listening a lot and kind of going back to that, listening a lot, repeating back, writing things down, double checking to make sure we're on the same page.
One of the other challenges I was thinking about was, like I mentioned, I'm not a natural born leader. So for me to just learn and grow leadership skills was something that definitely needed to take on that challenge. And I love challenges. So that was something for me to just, okay, I'm not a natural born leader, but they have books and books about management and leadership. And there's always amazement, like how many different books there are on stuff. And there's just so much information out there. And it's actually sometimes overwhelming, but actually sometimes a blessing too, because like we'll be reading a book together and I'll be like, that is some good information. So just continuously educating myself. And I mean, knowing personally, I know that I'm not perfect. And so I can always get better.
Were there any other formal leadership training classes that you attended or any materials or references that you found particularly helpful as you grew into this position?
Yeah, so I'm very fortunate and thankful for Huffman Engineering for giving me the opportunity to grow as an individual, as a leader. I'm part of the leadership team, and as part of that leadership team, we actually are doing some training right now, or kind of some coaching ourselves. So like, not only are we coaching our staff and stuff, but ourselves are getting coaching on how to be better leaders and how to lead this company, how to grow the company. So we actually have paid training that we're engaged in to help us continue to grow.
And what about other books? You mentioned there were a lot of books you kind of read along the way. It also sounds like you did a little bit of mentorship internally. Let's talk a little more about some of those other resources and how you developed them and how you found them and which ones you found the most helpful.
Yeah, so as a leadership team, we would kind of do like a little book club amongst ourselves. We've read several different books. Last year, Unstoppable Teams was one that we were reading. It's a little bit of a story within the dialogue and just real interesting read about, I won't go into all the details, but anyways, it seems like every book is like that we've come across, that we've read together. And the beauty of having like a book club or several people that are reading it together is like, I may read it and get this out of it, and then my colleague might be like, oh, well, when I read that, this is what I got out of it. And it's like different perspectives. So that's been really nice to go through it with other people, kind of having almost like our peer groups that we have for, CSI has a lot of peer groups that you can be a part of. Brad, who's also on this Emerging Leaders Committee, we've gotten to know each other over the last few conferences. And it's just been really nice to just talk and bounce ideas and hear, what are you going through and things like that.
I want to throw that over to Andrew or Becca as well. Were there any kind of resources or things that you utilized to grow that you found particularly useful that you want to share?
I really did find the CSIA best practices instrumental in making me a better leader. One of the things I distilled from that kind of a high level idea is that your practices are never rock solid, that you should always be evaluating all your processes and figuring out if they're working. And then if they're not working, figure out how to adjust the process to try to get the desired result. And I think tying that back to my own job here, one of the things that I'm always looking at is, am I doing a good job for where the company is now? Am I accomplishing what I need to for the employees that I'm working with? So I'm always trying to adjust what I'm doing at work. It's like a work in progress. This job in itself, it needs to adjust all the time based on what the market's doing, what's going on with my employees. Like Keith mentioned, like a PID loop where there's constant things happening with your employees, personal things going on, dissatisfaction with the career after a number of years. So I'm always looking at those factors too. Like recently we had a project engineer who really wanted to be a project manager. So he's taken some classes through an online college, and the goal is to get him into another career path so he can actually do what he really wants to do. And I'm losing an engineer from my team, but we're gaining another manager here at TSI that's got practical experience. And so just looking at that at a high level stance at CSIA best practices is really, really valuable. Just doing my day-to-day job here.
With thousands of qualified integrators and suppliers, the CSIA Industrial Automation Exchange is your one-stop spot to identify and connect with a diverse community of integrators and suppliers to help you deliver a low-risk and successful project. Using this powerful platform, you can do customized searches and filter by industry vertical, expertise, location, certifications, and more to source the right partners and products for your needs. For SIs and partners, it provides a platform to support your content and SEO marketing efforts, position yourself as a thought leader, and nurture prospects during their complicated buyer's journey. Why not take a minute to visit www.csiaexchange.com and see for yourself? No swiping left, no swiping right. Just connect directly to quality industry experts. It's really that simple, I promise.
Becca, how about you? Any resources or books or training classes or peer groups or anything else that you have felt that have been really good for you?
There are so many out there. I attended one here in the Northwest. It's HPEC, High Performance Enterprise Consortium. I had to look it back up. And so it was lean in the human element. And it was a really good, tangible, hands-on training. But I would say there's so many podcasts, there's so many books, there's so many things out there. For me, it's people, though. So it's been my CSIA peer group. It's being on the best practice committee and sharing ideas with those people. It's been getting to know my coworkers. Those relationships and learning from humans directly, I think is invaluable. That's the best way to learn from people and really get a firm understanding of what works and what doesn't, and what struggles have we all gone through and what did we learn. You can't beat people. You got to spend time with people.
And then kind of jumping back into the challenges, we kind of went on a little bit of a tangent there, but jumping back into the challenges, Andrew, you shared the story about the messy desk and everything else. Keith or Becca, do you have any examples of spots where, you had a similar messy desk situation where you were approaching it wrong and kind of caught yourself and were able to step back, or where hindsight kind of helped you see a better way to approach some things?
I'm sure there are probably tons of different examples that, but trying to speak to one. Somewhat recently, we had a new staff member that definitely operated in a different way than I did. And when you're on a project and you're on a startup and it's just pretty intense, the customer's saying, hey, we need to get this up and running. And now you've got a staff member that's just kind of going off the rails. It was challenging for me. I don't operate like that. So, it's hard for me to put myself in their shoes and know what they're going through. But really, that was kind of like Becca's talking about. It's like people, it's like understanding them and seeing where they're coming from, and come to find out like this person's they've had a tough life coming into this, and, just having that understanding and not thinking like how I would, but it's like thinking about how they would instead.
Yeah, great. And then I guess, Keith, kind of taking a little bit of direction, what are some of the ways that you've personally changed or had personal adaptations that have been really important to you to be successful in your role?
So for me personally, like I said before, I'm not a natural born leader. So one of the ways I kind of challenged myself to be able to grow as a leader was outside of work. I really challenged myself to get into leadership type roles. So good example is my wife and I, when our kids were in elementary school, we somehow got suckered into that president of the PTO. At that time, it was a little bit more my wife than me. But then as I got into it, I was like, okay, like I said, I was not like leadership and being a leader type person is not really me. I like doing technical stuff. So that was a challenge. And then what I learned from that was like, hey, this is really good. I'm like learning how to deal with other people, how to coordinate things, different skills that I didn't really have. So I challenged myself again, so kids are a good source for like being able to insert yourself into some leadership role, so at the high school level right now, I'm going on my 4th or 5th year as president of our booster club. And that's a whole nother, it's a whole nother challenge. But there are things that I pick up from that directly relate over to, how I fulfill being the engineering manager. There are things that I learned that I probably wouldn't have learned doing this role here as an engineering manager. So just personally outside of the office, just putting yourself into positions of leadership, there's many opportunities. There's always people asking for, because like that booster club thing, it was like, I remember sitting in there with about 10 other people and, the athletic director's like, hey, would anybody step up and be president of this and keep this thing going? And of course it's like crickets. So it's kind of like, okay, I don't know what I'm doing. And, I think I heard Becca say, just not being afraid to just try it, putting yourself out there. So like, I don't know anything about running a booster club, but hey, I think there's some good things that will come out of this. I feel like it's growth for me, at the same time you're doing something good for your community. So yeah.
Becca, I'll jump over to you. If you had one piece of advice to give, this room of emerging leaders, what's one piece of takeaway that someone should either go try or do, or things that you really think stuck with you and helped you through?
Definitely the people aspect. But I know when I was younger, I was really tied up into titles. I wanted to run the world. I wanted to be the boss of all the things. The title was so important to me, to be a manager, to then be a vice president, to then be the president. And the older and wiser I get, the more I realize those aren't always great positions to be in. And you can do great things without those titles. So I think for me, it was just to learn that you don't have to have the title. You don't have to run the company to make a huge impact. And to Keith's point, you can do the same thing in your community and in your world. We don't have to be the president of the United States to make an impact. We can go out there and do things every day. Again, it comes down to people, building relationships with other people, being kind, treating others the way we want to be treated. Those just key factors are what's going to help you to be a great leader and find success in life.
Andrew, same question over to you. What's one piece of advice that people can take away here? One thing you just recommend people try or do as they're making these changes?
One of the things that you want to do is own the job that you transition into. So it's tempting to look at if you're at a company and you've been there for a little while and you're taking over a job for someone that had the role before you, it's tempting to just transition to that role and think, I'm going to do everything this individual did before me, and that's how I'm going to run this job. But you're going to bring different skill sets to the position. You're going to bring a completely different definition sometimes to what your role is there. So really define that role in your own mind, come up with some KPIs, things that you want to accomplish when taking that role. Obviously, there's certain things that are going to be necessary for that position in order for it to work, but there's different ways of making that position work for who you are as a person. So really don't have any expectations that it's going to look the same as whoever had it before you, and be very creative about how you take that role, because you might really be able to add a different perspective to it than the person that had it before you. So just be creative when you take that new position.
And Keith, same thing from you. Any one piece of advice people should take away from this?
Yeah, so maybe the one thing is what I mentioned before about just listen, learn it, do it well, pass it on. So with the people that are reporting to you or that you're coaching or mentoring, just listening to them, learning about them and just trying to improve and do things well and passing it on, as well as listening to the people above you. So like, the owners of the company that have given you this opportunity, like listening to what they're saying, really just everybody below and above, and even on the same level with you, they're never going to know everything. So take advantage of what other people bring to the table, because they definitely may hear something differently than you, and just focus on those positives.
Well, that's it for today's episode of Talking Industrial Automation. If you'd like to hear more from the Emerging Leaders Special Interest Group, you can find their upcoming events at www.controlsys.org/events. Thanks for listening. I really do appreciate your support of the show. If you enjoy this podcast, please subscribe in Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Google Podcasts, or wherever you listen to podcasts. You can also help others find us by leaving a 5-star review and sharing your favorite episodes with colleagues. Thanks for listening to the Talking Industrial Automation podcast. Thanks also to bensound.com and Wistia for the music bumpers. Until next time.